works for the Golf Channel. He's usually in the booth handing them nuggets of information as he's their head of editorial research. Plus, he wrote a book called The Magnificent Masters. We're going to talk about that, but I absolutely love having him on to talk golf, and now that he's back on the right side of the pond, as they say, Gil Capps joins us here on the Pete Thompson Show. Gil, good morning.
Pete, good morning to you. Always a pleasure to be talking to you, and many congratulations to you on your new show.
Thank you so much. Saturday mornings from 8 to 10. Hopefully it's a destination for our local audience as we try to have more live and local on Saturday mornings here on 97.3 ESPN. So let's talk first and foremost. Here you're back from the Open Championship. See how I didn't call it the British Open? Only the uneducated in the United States call it the British Open. It's the Open Championship, right? And Royal Portrush, to me, like the winner may have been Shane Lowry, but the golf course certainly was the winner too. And I saw some of your pictures from over there. Incredible.
No, I think it was, but that was an incredible venue for those of you guys and gals listening who are just golf fanatics and playing golf. This is one for the bucket list. When I first saw it last fall, when I went for a little reconnaissance trip, immediately shot up into my top five worldwide. And I think the success that they had with the golf course, the players just loved it. There really wasn't a single complaint about it from anybody, even those that they kind of complain a lot when they go to new places. And the success they had just with the sellout, first sellout ever in Open history. It's one of those events, Pete, that's unique to over there, and unique really in sports, is that for all these years, the Open was an event you could go to and just go right up to the gate and buy a ticket and walk right in, no matter what day it was, what venue it was, etc. But because of Portrush, a smaller town, infrastructure needed to be a little smaller. Of course, couldn't accommodate throngs and throngs of people, and they thought the demand, if they did that, would be so high it would cause big issues. And so they made it for the first time an all-ticket event, first saw it in the Open's history, and I get the feeling that the Open will be back there sooner rather than later. I mean, maybe could even be 5 years down the road where we're back at Portrush in Northern Ireland.
Gil, I'm looking at your pictures on Twitter here, and I want you to describe to the folks, take us behind the curtain a little bit of what it's like to be in the studio, for example. And of course, the second picture, your first picture has main studio, right? And has the Golf Channel and the NBC Sports logo on there, right? And it's like the box basically with the window. And then the second picture, well, this can't be right because it's a beautiful sunny day. You can't be in Ireland.
Well, we got all four seasons over there that week, which you tend to get over in the Britain and in Ireland here this time of year. The Open is a little unique, Pete, in that we have normally an event in the U.S. like events coming up at NBC, BMW Championship and Tour Championship next month, and the FedEx Cup playoffs. We'll have a main announce tower at 18, and then we'll have outer towers, at usually 16 and 17 with those announcers in separate towers. But the Open, we stick everybody in one big booth. And so that makes it a really big booth. And it's usually in a place where you get a pretty good backdrop. And so we were a little different place. We were up by right of 2 Green, looking back at the over the entire golf course and out to the Atlantic Ocean. And I think people get a little surprised when they come up in the booth and see, and because you see it on camera and you see 2 talents sitting there, and you see the backdrop, and then to see all things behind the scenes. See camera and audio and stage manager and other announcers and statisticians, et cetera, and a place where you're in there for quite a long time. We were on the air, Golf Channel and NBC combined at the Open for literally every shot. Every first tee shot in the morning to the last putt at night. So it's an incredible week. It really has become our biggest week of the year.
I certainly enjoyed, by the way, you talk about being on for every minute of every shot. Early, very early, like Sir Nick Faldo was on the coverage early before it then would turn over to like NBC proper when he was on the Golf Channel coverage early in the morning last weekend. And that Nick Faldo was a lot different than the Nick Faldo you get on Sunday in a regular PGA event, or even on a Sunday at the Masters, for example. That Nick Faldo was funny and engaging and telling stories about, his former Open experiences and how he treated things. Or there was a helicopter coming in. He says, "Here comes your dragon." I love that Nick Faldo.
It kind of does free up a little bit when you're there, and those guys were actually on, pretty early in the morning over there, and on a world feed, which is, wasn't actually a Golf Channel NBC production per se, but we take the world feed early in the morning for about the first 5 or 6 hours on Thursday, Friday, because, as you know, look, we're so lucky to do what we do, being in sports and working in sports television, sports media, but it can be a grind, and to be on the air that long and have your attention span and antennas up constantly that long, it can take its toll. So you have to pace talent, to pace all your workers for a week like that, and so that's why it's kind of split up in that manner. But we certainly had an all-star cast of announcers, that's for certain, during the week.
And before I move on to all the plots that took place in this Open Championship, there's so many to talk about. Just one more question from, peeling back the curtain there. Johnny Miller has moved on, but your relationship with him and how nice it was to be able to work with him for so long. And just if you could describe what your relationship was with Johnny Miller and how important he was to Golf Channel's coverage and NBC Sports Golf coverage for so many years.
Well, it was, Pete. It was really a pleasure. I first worked with Johnny Miller at the 1993 Ryder Cup, and while I didn't start working all the NBC events until 1997, that's 23 years. With 22 years full with the man I consider him the greatest golf analyst ever, and there's not even anybody else in the top 10. Not to downgrade anybody else that's working, but he just set this bar so high. And it's not just for golf. It's all of sports. And back in the 90s, I think you forget, how the landscape was. There wasn't a lot of it was still a lot of ex-players. It was a lot of guys who still hang out with all the guys.
They were afraid to criticize. Yeah, they were afraid to criticize, yeah.
Wasn't a lot of criticism, and I think you've had even guys like Charles Barkley who said, I looked at Johnny Miller. Johnny Miller was the guy who kind of did it like it's supposed to be done, and not just, it's not this there was the desire to say what was on his mind, that the audience came first, and answering to himself came first, and everybody else second. That set Johnny apart, but there was also the part of Johnny where he had a talent to do this. He had an IQ and an ability to see things and take things apart in a way that others couldn't. And a lot of that's just was God kind of given ability. The crazy thing is you hear people all the time, and they'll hear them one week and they'll say something, the next week they'll kind of say the same thing. And so I never said the same thing twice in all those shows, 258 events. I worked with Johnny Miller and never heard him say the same thing twice on air. Always keeping it fresh, different perspective, little sense of humor here or there, which sometimes you had to be paying attention to kind of get it, get what he was saying. But a one of a kind, and I certainly witnessed him. We're so glad we have such a strong crew, and Paul Asey has been great coming in to kind of take that spot, and Paul knows, it's hard to replace Johnny Miller, and you keep Johnny Miller, and he's done a tremendous job. But all that said, I think I'd be lying if I said that I didn't miss him, and that I didn't think that that our broadcast and golf in general, people watching at home were a little less for having him not be around anymore.
We're spending some time with Gil Capps. He's the author of The Magnificent Masters, an unbelievable book of which I need to purchase a copy of, read, and then send to you for your autograph. Head of Editorial Research Unit at the Golf Channel and NBC Sports Golf, and it says often found in the TV tower on the 18th hole. You can follow him on Twitter at Gil Capps, GILCAPPS. So let's talk about this 148th Open. Oh, GilCapps.com as well. I should include that in. I thought there was such drama, Gil. There were so many different storylines that interwove each different day, including the fact that the story on day one was Rory blowing up, but then the story on day two was how hard Rory fought to try and make that cut and just missed out.
You know, I think he realized he back in December he came to the Golf Channel and gave a little talk and talked about the very end about the Open's going to be at Port Rush next year, and he said, if I won there, it would kind of be a walk-off moment. So that kind of shows you where his mind, I think, was even 7 months out from this championship, and maybe even more, how much it meant to him. And we talked about in our coverage, all of these guys from Northern Ireland to have a major championship go back to this country, and all the political turmoil and the troubles over the years and the things that have gone in that country, and to have basically the biggest sporting event ever to be played there, come there, and how important it was for them. And I think there was pressure and nerves on him, and he kind of finally admitted it afterwards. An 8 on the first hole, that's hard to come back from. The very first hole you play to hit a ball out of bounds and make an 8, and then he didn't finish well that round when he shot that 79 in the first round, 7 in the last hole. You take those 2 holes, out of play, the +7 on those 2 holes, and he's fine. He's maybe kind of even somewhat in contention there going to the weekend, right, Pete?
Yep.
But I think that kind of just loosened him up, and it's interesting when you get these golfers what they do when they're able to play with a free mind, and that's what Friday was, a free mind. 65, and just to come back and 14 strokes better and get that close to making the cut was a remarkable turnaround. I think that we'll see. We'll see this kind of stings Rory kind of here for the rest of the year, whether he's kind of able to kind of pick it back up and play like he was playing early in the year. Obviously, won the first big event of the year. The Players, we can't forget that, won the Canadian Open. There's some important stuff here coming up as well. So we'll see if Roy can kind of pick it back up, or if this kind of deflates him and just kind of toast through the rest of the year until we get to that starting next year and golf starts ramping up, and Roy probably starts looking ahead to that Masters again, the one major he hasn't won, and trying to become the 6th player to complete the Grand Slam.
Gil Capps is with us. And Gil, then the other thing on Friday was Darren Clarke. That was so tough to watch on 18. Darren Clarke was such a good story, and he, of course, hit the ceremonial first tee shot, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then here you thought Darren Clarke was going to be a guy that was going to make the cut, and did he double bogey or triple bogey 18?
Let's see. He tripled, I believe. Yeah, I think he went from even 1 inside the cut line to 3 over, which is 2 outside the cut line. It's funny, Pete. I never try to think. I don't ever try to think for players, and thankfully I'm not on air, so I don't have to kind of try to do that sometimes.
Right.
But as that was happening, I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe Darren really didn't want to play the weekend. Not like he wasn't not trying, but that happened a few years ago when Jack Nicklaus had his final Open appearance at St. Andrews in 2005, when it got down to the end, and it was Bobby Clampett who said something on there to that effect. Maybe Jack just doesn't want to make the cut, and Bobby, could say some things that were kind of out there, and that kind of got criticized. People thinking, what is he saying? No, Jack Nicklaus. Well, sure enough, after the round was over, Jack said kind of something to that effect. Not that he wasn't trying, but the fact that it was kind of so perfect, playing the 2 days and doing the ceremonial goodbye, etc. Maybe there's a little bit of that with Darren, because he wasn't going to win. There's been all this hype, all this stuff that Darren had been doing leading up to the Open. He did some stuff for us, did stuff for the other broadcasters, players coming in, hosting people, etc. Like I said, it's a tiring week, and maybe he just thought that was somewhere in the back of his mind that he was okay with just playing the first two rounds. And now he's right in contention of the Senior Open this weekend down in England. So who knows? But for him, for Graham McDowell, who was born and raised right there in Portrush, who got in the field, the former U.S. Open champion, to play, and for him to make the cut, was special. His family is still there. His brother, a greenkeeper there at the club at Royal Portrush for 20 years. So just a week, none of those guys will forget. And talking about Ireland and Northern Ireland, kind of that dichotomy of politics. Obviously, we can lead into maybe your next day you want to talk about, or you may want to talk about a couple of the big American stars, but Shane Lowry, the winner, guy from the Republic of Ireland, the golf in that country. It's kind of above politics in the sense that it's an all-island sport. So, golf there predates the partition of the six northern counties into Northern Ireland and ruled from London, a part of the United Kingdom, and the Republic of Ireland south of the border. But golf predates all that. So the governing body of golf on the island is the Golfing Union of Ireland. So the guys in Northern Ireland growing up were playing on teams with guys from the Republic of Ireland. They knew each other. Religion, politics really never entered the sport, unlike a lot of other sports over there, like Gaelic athletic activities,
hurling,
rugby, soccer, etc. So it's completely different, and that's why you saw this. I think the outpouring of support for anybody from the island there, but Shane Lowry, a guy who won amateur events at Portrush, plays links golf courses tremendously, and a short game. Wow, the match kind of historically a short game being great, but a tee to green game which matched a short game for the week, leading the field in greens and regulation, which was kind of the MO for the major champions this year. Which usually it's a lot of times it's kind of a mix here and there, but. Yeah, Tiger Woods at the Masters leading the field in greens and regulation. Brooks Koepka at the PGA leading the greens and field in regulation. Gary Woodland was second at Pebble Beach at the U.S. Open, only because Brooks Koepka led the field in greens and regulation. And then Shane Lowry at the Open leading field in greens and regulation, going on to win. So it really was for those of you who are who like ball striking, would rather see Ben Hogan instead of Jordan Spieth. This was your kind of major year.
Yeah, we'll get to those American guys in a minute. I have no problem talking about the unification that the Open can do, and that's why I thought Lowry's quote afterwards, he said, everyone knows we're all one country when it comes to golf. I thought that was perfect for Shane Lowry, 32, to stand on the 18th green when it was all said and done and hold the claret jug and announce that. And you could just tell how excited the patrons were and how excited everybody was that one of their own won. If we are talking about like Darren Clark and his mishaps, or Rory and his mishaps, NBC sports analyst David Duvall, you're eligible and you get an exemption in the Open until age 60. God bless him, the 2001 Open winner, David Duvall. Have you ever seen this happen? What happened to him on 7 when he made a 14 on the 7th hole?
We've seen some high scores in the past in events. It's usually beside the name of Daly, D-A-L-Y. But there are places that you can get into on these links courses that you just can't get out of. And when you compile that with errors and rule situations and playing wrong balls, which David did, your score can get up there pretty quickly, and that's what happened to David. I think you got to give kudos to a guy who shoots 91, right, and comes back and still keeps playing, right, and it wasn't like he wasn't trying his hardest. You just got it kind of in a bad situation there, and it humbles you. Humbles, and it shows people outside. The sport, how tough it can be. A guy who was was once a star. All those I think 13 PGA Tour wins, an Open champion, and who can kind of struggle on a golf course like this, even though David doesn't really play full time anymore. It reminds me of the first time I went to an Open as a spectator, Pete. This was back in 1989.
All right.
Just went as a spectator and won to follow around Jack Nicklaus, right? At that time, he would have been 49, but still all-time great. Jack went there for a time after the Masters when he won in 86 for about the next 12 years. It was like, can he win another? Everybody thought, like, can he do it? Followed around Jack Nicklaus and never get. He's in the middle of one of the fairways at Royal Turn and just tops the ball. No reason, no rhyme or reason, just stops the ball and it goes about 20 yards in front of him.
Wow.
And that right away, right, it makes the here's the greatest golfer of all time, healthy, still playing okay, and just topping the ball in the fairway. So things like that happen, and memories like that stick in your mind for 30 years about how tough the game can be, and especially at an Open where you get the weather. And the vagaries of the weather can make a big difference, as it did with Shane Lowry, kind of getting a little break.
No doubt.
In the weather on Saturday afternoon, no wind, calmed down, and he was able to go on that run there on his second nine and shoot that 63. And then he kind of also got a break, I think, Pete, on Sunday, because I think in the end, the bad weather, the wind, really helped him instead of hurt him. Because here's a guy we questioned after that 63 and the emotional high he was on, and the crowds were unbelievable. The question: how can you come back down from that?
Right.
The next day and stick to your game plan, stick to playing golf. And I think the bad weather helped. Number one, it kind of helped that. It kind of helped them can focus on golf and shots out there. And number two, it obliterated, the other guys behind him, because nobody in the last 14 pairings was under par on the day, and nobody was going to shoot anything under par to catch him, and he just kind of had to maintain. He had a little run there in the middle of the round where he got a couple of breaks, made a couple of putts, a couple of birdies, and was able to not just hold on him. He won by 6. So he got a couple of breaks there, which you have to get breaks to win major championships. But wow, it's fitting. If you couldn't have a Rory, couldn't have a one of the big American stars from our standpoint, obviously it helps us, it helps ratings. But he would be kind of right there in the next year. What a tremendous story.
Yeah, real quick, I'll tell you that as a former TV guy, we're talking with Gil Capps here on the Pete Thompson Show, the Golf Channel's head of editorial research and a guy that's been to a bunch of Open championships. As a former TV guy, a lot of times, Gil, I'll see a full-screen graphic that gets my attention, and that's my training, right, to be able to read them quickly and ascertain the information. And I'll sometimes get up and take a picture, and I took a picture of last 6 games, final round scoring: Henrik Stenson, Jordan Spieth, Tony Finau, John Rahm, Danny Willett, Lee Westwood, Ricky Fowler, Justin Rose, Brooks Koepka, J.B. Holmes, plus 16. It was a combined total of plus 51. Other than really Finau at even, only Lowry was able to sort of successfully navigate his way through that final round.
Yeah, I mean, he wound up being 72, right? 1 over par for the round, if my memory serves me correctly, and that's actually under the average of this last. It's even higher if you go back more groups. And more than 100 over par those last 28 players that went out on that Sunday, and but as part of it, you go to the Open and you want to see a couple of really nice days and sun out and beautiful weather, so you can enjoy where you kind of are and get the beauty shots. But you also want to see a little bit of nasty. That's the whole point of going there, and that's one of the defenses for the golf course. I think you saw some low scoring. At times they're in Port Rush, and of course this always leads into another conversation about the game and where it's headed and equipment and technology. But it is the guys are able to do things that you couldn't do with a golf ball 20, 40, 60 years ago, and and golf courses really do kind of have to be tricked up in order to prevent guys from shooting very good scores. And you saw that at Port Rush, because if there was no wind, there were really good scores. But when you throw in a little bit of wind and then a lot of wind, then courses like that really become a challenge, and as they should be.
Well, let's mention this, Gil, since you mentioned the Americans. We'll close with this. The two big names that everybody asks about, Tiger Woods did win the Masters, but then Tiger Woods at Royal Portrush left saying, I just want to go home, right? He was just exhausted and worn out. And I won a wager with a friend of mine. Somebody texted me, we bet a sub, a Vic sub, a sandwich here in New Jersey, like from one of the sub shops, whether Phil was going to make the cut. And I love Phil. I hated to go against him. But if Phil Mickelson is fasting for 6 days and grasping at straws to try and get his game in order, I felt like, no, he's not. How do you think, where do you see Tiger and Phil now that this year's in the books? Like, is Phil ever going to win a major again?
Well, that's a big question, Pete. And fortunately for us golf fans, right, the season really isn't in the books. We have the major's over, but we've got a lot of big events coming up, and got the FedEx Cup playoffs here coming up, other events later in the fall. But I'll take Tiger first. My level of concern for Tiger is elevated, and the number one reason is I know how much how much stock he puts in the World Golf Championship events. He sees those as almost at a level of major championships, smaller fields, big purses. I think to some extent maybe feels like kind of owes the tour on these things as well with some of their support over the years. For him not to play this week in Memphis at a World Golf Championship event, alarm bells are going off in my head. I don't know. Tiger's very private. It leaves you to speculate. I don't know what's going on, whether it's actually the back that's an issue, whether he's got some personal things going on, whether it's stuff that's related to, we already get, the fact is he got a DUI, right, 2 years ago,
right.
And it was because of certain things he was taking. Whether that's back in play, just not sure. But it wasn't the Tiger Woods, at the Open, either as a player or it seemed like as a person in his media, the same Tiger Woods we saw last year, just happy, kind of normal, looks like he's got everything in order. His life is great. Golf back, and then earlier this year, obviously, the Masters. It's a concern, and it'll be interesting to see, Pete, when he plays next. The FedEx Cup is also important to him. He won the Tour Championship last year. He's currently 27th in the FedEx Cup. With top 30, will wind up going to Atlanta here in a month. But we got two playoff events before that here that start in 2 weeks. The first, the Northern Trust, and the second, the BMW Championship at Medina, which we'll do an NBC, and then the Tour Championship. He's got to play one of those. He's got to play at least one of those playoff events before the Tour Championship and play kind of well to accrue enough points to stay in that top 30. We'll see. It's a big question mark, and I'm concerned about Tiger Woods. Phil Mickelson, he's a guy, Pete, I think you're going to see it. His whole career he's been hit and miss,
Right.
Miscut. One major, the next major he can come out and be top five. But Phil, we have to remember too, these guys, they were the stars kind of for most of my career, and now they're making me feel old. When you're talking about a guy who's 43, Tiger, and Phil 49, and that's in golfing terms, 49 it used to be like being 80 or 90 as a person. It's a little different now with equipment. It feels a little different player. I think we'll see his name at the top of some of the major leaderboards for the next few years. He can catch fire, and especially at a place like Augusta. Both those guys going forward they could easily be up there on the weekends in the Masters the next 10 years. But we'll see if Phil can rebound too. He's just outside the top 30. he'll play some of these playoff events, and his game just kind of hasn't been the same since March. He's really struggled, and we'll see if he can kind of get it back and make a little run here in August at that FedEx Cup.
Well, your analysis is always on point. I certainly appreciate you reminding me that the golf season is not done. There's still events to come. Gil Capps with us from the Golf Channel, the head of editorial research, and check out his book, author of The Magnificent Masters. You're right about Phil and the Masters. I mean, geez, if Freddie Couples can get to the Masters weekends as long as he did, there's no reason why Phil couldn't at least get to the weekend, and then who knows? You get to the weekend and who knows? Well, Gil, I certainly appreciate having you on my show.